All right, so today, November the 24th, 2021, this is breaking news at about 2 p.m. today. The Ahmaud Arbery trial has concluded and the jury has reached a verdict. The verdict that they reached is guilty on all counts for all three men. For those of you who don't remember what this trial was about, this was a case where there was a house that was under construction somewhere in Georgia. I think it was, well, the trial took place in Brunswick. I don't know the name of the town. But this house was under construction, and there had been thefts from this house on multiple occasions. So people in the neighborhood were watching this house, and on this particular day, they saw a man that they believed was on the property. They believed that he was stealing something from that property, and they believed that he was the one responsible for previous thefts. So what they did was they set out to try to detain this man and hold him for police. The man was Ahmaud Arbery, and he did not want to be detained. He continued to run. There's some people that are saying that he was just out for a jog when these men had tried to stop him. I believe there was some, at least pictures, maybe a little bit of video, evidence of him on or about this property. But regardless, they tried to stop him. He refused to stop, and he kept on running. This is where they made their mistakes. They got into their vehicles and they chased after him in an attempt to place him under arrest and detain him for police to arrive on scene. What they did, I've heard multiple different stories about this. I did not watch the trial, so I'm sorry. But from what I understand, they tried to run him off the road a couple of times, which he eluded. And then eventually they pulled up ahead of him, stopped their vehicle in the middle of the road in front of him. One of the men got out of the vehicle, walked over to the passenger side, and confronted Mr. Arbery with a firearm. During that altercation, the gun went off, and Mr. Arbery was shot. A struggle ensued over that gun, and there was some more shots that occurred. Ahmaud Arbery died as a result of the gunshots. So let's read a little bit from the Times article today that announced the verdict. 3 men were found guilty of murder and other charges Wednesday for the pursuit and fatal shooting of Ahmaud Arbery. 3 white men found guilty of murder and other charges Wednesday in pursuit to the, sorry, I said that already, Arbery, a 25-year-old black man. In that case, together with the killing of George Floyd, helped inspire racial justice protests last year. The 3 defendants, Travis McMichael, 35, his father, Gregory McMichael, 65, and their neighbor, William Bryan, 52, face sentences of up to life in prison for state crimes. The men have also been indicted on separate federal charges, including hate crimes, attempted kidnapping, and are expected to stand trial for those crimes in February. So the guilty verdict today was for the crimes that they were indicted on in the state of Georgia. They still have federal cases that they're going to be waiting for. They have a potential to serve up to life in prison for this case. I'll speak very briefly on how they can all be convicted of murder in this case, because I don't believe all 3 men actually shot Mr. Arbery. But at least in the state of Ohio, I'm assuming it's pretty uniform across the country. If you start in action a chain of events that directly leads to someone else being murdered, you can be charged in murder. So the prosecution presented a case and the jury agreed that all 3 men contributed mostly equally to the death of Mr. Arbery. It doesn't mean that they pulled the trigger. It just means that they were all equal participants in this crime that led to his death, and his death did not need to occur. That's what the court and the trial found. So here's a little bit of the video that was taken on that day. Showed Mr. Arbery running, and there's the vehicle that was stopped directly in front of him. You'll be able to see that he tries to go, there was someone standing by the driver's side. He tries to run around the passenger side. It's my belief that he tried to go around the one side of the car, saw somebody with a weapon. So he decided to change course, go around the passenger side of the car, saw somebody with a weapon standing directly in front of him. He realized that he was not going to be able to successfully evade this situation without a confrontation. So he continued to run at the person with the firearm and a confrontation ensued. He was shot in the process. I don't know if he was shot intentionally or accidentally. It doesn't really matter in this case. If he was shot accidentally, it really means these guys made a lot of really poor choices. Let's put it that way. You don't. Well, I want to start kind of at the beginning of where they went wrong. In this case, they saw somebody they thought had broken into the property and stolen in the past, and they thought that he was the suspect that Mr. Arbery was that suspect. So they decided to try to detain him for the police. When they tried to detain him, he ran. At the time that he was running, he had not necessarily broken into anything. At best, he had committed a misdemeanor trespass. So what they were trying to do is they were using lethal force to detain somebody for a misdemeanor. And in the state of Ohio, and I'm sure it's very similar in Georgia, you're not, as a regular civilian, you're not allowed to detain somebody or effect an arrest on somebody unless they have committed a felony. We get these calls a lot from people who have their cars broken into, and they're very upset that the people are always gone before we arrive, and they want to know if they can go out and detain them before we get there. My answer is always the same. No, if you do, that's kidnapping. What these guys were trying to do, in my opinion, is they were trying to kidnap him. So if they weren't convicted of murder, I think kidnapping would have been a very appropriate charge. But luckily in this case, the jury decided that murder was the appropriate charge, and they convicted on murder, which I thought was the right call. Basically, from the day this all started, I believed that murder was going to be the appropriate charge and that they should be found guilty. It was one of those ones where obviously I hadn't started this channel yet a year ago. Recently, I knew that the case was coming up, and I was trying to decide if I was going to make a video before or after the verdict. Generally speaking, I don't think it's a good idea to make this kind of video before a verdict, unless, of course, it's a situation that's brand new and there's not even charges yet. Then I might speak on some of these things that happen going forward. But that's really about it. I'll also say that just as a general rule of thumb, if you're going to detain somebody and they are not presenting deadly force, it's not a good idea for you to present deadly force. I was thinking about this earlier that, as a police officer, let's say I enter a building, it's a burglary call. And, this is a good burglary. Presenting deadly force is the appropriate thing to do. You walk in the house, you're clearing the building, you're going room to room to room, and then you find somebody hiding behind some curtains or something. You can see their feet hanging out. So you're going to stand there and you're going to hold that person at gunpoint. If they leave their hiding spot and they were to rush towards me, I'm probably not going to shoot that person. Or I'm going to say that shooting that person is most likely not the appropriate response. The appropriate thing to do is to blade your body. You don't necessarily want to exit the room because you could create a spot where they're going to hide in that room, but you want to blade your body, protect yourself, holster your weapon, and then be able to go hands on. In this case, when I'm in my vehicle, if I have a suspect that's running and I pull this kind of maneuver, my weapon is never going to be in my hand. I'm going to jump out of the vehicle and I'm going to try to go hands on with that person. Even if it's not a lethal force situation, I'm not one of those guys who likes to pull my taser and approach somebody with my taser. If I'm approaching people, I want to have my hands free so that I can do things I need to do with my hands. If the situation changes where I need to use deadly force, that's when I will make that decision. It's never a good idea to have a physical confrontation with somebody when you have a weapon in your hand. So, some things about this trial. I think this should serve as a warning to everybody that if you witness somebody committing property crimes, especially misdemeanor crimes, you should not try to detain that person, and you should never try to detain that person using deadly force. If you do and it goes wrong, most likely you're going to be tried and convicted of murder, which is what happened to these guys, and that was the appropriate thing. I don't know. I think those are going to be my thoughts for today. So, thank you for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.